"We gave your room to my parents," Brooke said, not even turning around from the stove. "They're older. They need the space. You and Wes can figure something out." My room, the spare bedroom at the end of the hall, the one with the good light and the locked door, and the desk where I sat 8 hours a day writing the code that paid for the house we were all standing in. I looked past her into the hallway. My office door was open. My monitors were gone, stacked in the garage like junk. A floral suitcase sat on the floor where my chair used to be, and my mother-in-law's reading glasses were already on the windowsill. They hadn't asked. They'd just done it while I was out buying the groceries that fed every single person in that kitchen. So I smiled. A real one, easy and calm, the kind that should have scared her if she'd been paying attention. "Okay," I said, "that's fine." Then I packed a bag, drove to the nicest hotel in town, and slept like a baby. 48 hours later, Brooke was crying on my voicemail. My husband had figured out he didn't actually know how anything in his life got paid for, and 4 adults were about to learn that the woman they'd been treating like the help had been quietly holding up the entire roof. Before I tell you how I did it without raising my voice once, do this for me. If you've ever been pushed to the edges of your own home by people who decided your comfort came last, subscribe to this channel right now. Everything here is for the quiet ones who got tired of being quiet. Hit that button, then stay with me, because this is the story of the calmest week of my life. My name is Priya. I was 30 that year, and I'd bought that house myself at 26, 2 years before I ever met Wes. People always look surprised when I say that. A woman in her 20s, buying a 4-bedroom on her own. But I'd been writing software since I was a teenager, the kind of kid who learned to code off free videos because we couldn't afford classes. By 24, I had a remote job with a company out in Seattle, good money, the kind of salary nobody in my family quite believed was real. I saved hard. I lived small. And the day the bank handed me the keys to that quiet house outside Columbus, I sat on the empty living room floor and cried, because I was the first person in my family to own anything at all. That spare room became my office. 2 monitors, a desk I built from a kit, a door I kept closed during work hours. From that one room, I wrote the code that ran for a company 2,000 miles away, and that work paid the mortgage, the power, the water, the internet, and eventually, a whole lot more than just my own life. Wes came 2 years later. I met him at a friend's barbecue, funny and warm and easy to be around. We married 14 months after that. He moved into my house, which we started calling our house, because that's what you do when you love someone. I put him on nothing legally, not out of suspicion. It just never came up, and the lawyer who'd handled my closing had told me to keep the deed clean. So I did. Wes worked too, sort of. He sold cars at a dealership across town. Good months and bad months, the kind of income that came in waves. When his months were bad, I covered the gap. I never made a thing of it. That's marriage, I told myself. You carry each other. What I didn't see coming was how many people I'd end up carrying. Brooke was first, Wes's younger sister, 27, going through what she called a transition, which had lasted, by that summer, almost 14 months. She'd shown up one weekend with 2 suitcases and never quite left. She took the second guest room. She didn't pay rent, didn't buy groceries, didn't clean. She had opinions about everything, though, especially about me. "You work too much," she'd say, watching me come out of my office at the end of a 10-hour day. "You should relax more. Be present." The woman whose presence I was funding thought I should be more present. The takeover happened so slowly, I almost didn't feel it. That's how these things work. Nobody announces they're taking over your life. They just borrow a corner of it, and then another corner, and one day you look up and you're the guest. There was a dinner that spring I still think about. Wes wanted to have some of his old college friends over, 6 of them, and naturally the planning landed on me. I cooked for 9 people after a full day of work. I set the table, I poured the wine, and somewhere around the second course, one of his friends, a nice enough guy named Eric, asked me what I did for a living. Before I could answer, Brooke jumped in. "Oh, Priya does something with computers. She's always locked in that little room." She said it with a laugh, like I was a hobby, like the little room was where I went to hide from real life, instead of where I earned the money that bought the wine in his glass. Wes laughed too. That was the part that stayed with me. He laughed. I cleared the plates that night, all of them, while his friends thanked Wes for a great spread. And Lorraine, who'd been visiting that week, told me the chicken was a little dry. I washed dishes until midnight, and went to bed in my own house feeling like catering staff who hadn't been tipped. I told myself it was nothing. That's what you tell yourself over and over, until the day they carry your desk to the garage and you finally run out of nothing to tell yourself. Then came her parents, Wes and Brooke's mom and dad, Lorraine and Ron, who lived 3 states away and visited for a couple weeks, that always stretched into a couple months. Lorraine ran a household like a general. Within a day of arriving, she'd rearrange my kitchen, criticize my cooking, and ask Wes, in front of me, why his wife didn't make a proper breakfast. I cooked the breakfasts anyway. I drove Lorraine to her appointments. I paid for the groceries that fed 5 adults, and when Ron's truck needed a repair, I quietly covered that too, because Wes asked me to, and I didn't want to fight. The thing about Lorraine was that she never raised her voice. She didn't have to. She moved through my house like she'd been hired to manage it. The second week of that visit, I came out of my office to find she'd reorganized my entire kitchen, my spices in some new order I couldn't follow, my pots in different cabinets, a label maker she'd brought from home stuck to my own drawers. "You had it all wrong," she said, pleased with herself. "This is how a real kitchen runs." I stood there holding a coffee mug, in the kitchen I'd paid for, in the house I owned, being told I'd been doing my own life wrong, and I said, "Thank you, Lorraine," and went back to work, because the deadline didn't care about my feelings, and apparently neither did anyone in that house. Looking back, that label maker was the warning. A person who relabels your drawers is a person who has decided your home is theirs to organize. The office was just the next drawer. Here's a number for you, since numbers tell the truth better than feelings do. By that summer, beyond my own basic living, I was spending close to $4,000 a month on other people. The mortgage on the house they all lived in, Brooke's car payment, which Wes had temporarily put on our shared card a year ago, groceries for 5, the in-laws' flights, twice now, Ron's truck, Lorraine's prescriptions when her insurance lagged, $4,000 a month out of my account, earned in that one spare room they'd just decided to give away. Nobody knew the real number. That was my own mistake, and I own it. I'd made it all invisible. I paid things automatically, quietly, the way you do when you don't want to be thanked, but also don't want to seem like you're keeping score. I thought I was being generous. What I was actually doing was teaching 4 grown adults that the money simply appeared, like weather, like something that happened to them, rather than something a person did for them. You can't blame people for not seeing what you've worked so hard to keep invisible, but invisible has a cost, and that summer the bill came due all at once. It started on a Tuesday, the way these things do. Lorraine and Ron had been with us 3 weeks already, sleeping in the second guest room, the one Brooke wasn't in. It was fine. Cramped, but fine. Then Lorraine started making comments about her back, about the small bed, about how a couple their age really needed proper space. I half listened. I had a deadline. I was deep in a project that, if I'm honest, was the reason my company paid me what they did. And I spent that whole Tuesday behind my closed office door, headphones on, building something complicated and getting it right. I came out around 6 to start dinner. That's when I noticed the hallway. My office door, which I always kept shut, stood wide open, and the room behind it was wrong. My desk had been shoved against the wall. My monitors were gone. My chair was gone. In their place sat a queen air mattress, a floral suitcase, and Lorraine's reading glasses on the windowsill, like she'd already moved in. I stood there for a second, just looking. "Oh, good. You're done working," Brooke said, coming up behind me with a dish towel. We moved your stuff to the garage. Mom and Dad needed a real room, and you've got that whole desk thing you can set up anywhere. It's just a laptop, right? It was not just a laptop. It was a workstation that ran the project that paid for the air mattress her parents were about to sleep on. But she didn't know that, because I'd spent 2 years making sure nobody had to know anything uncomfortable. We gave your room to my parents, she said again, like the first time hadn't been clear enough. They're older, they need the space. You and Wes can figure something out. You and Wes can figure something out. In the house I bought, with the room I worked in, I found Wes in the living room, watching a game. Did you know they moved my office into the garage? I asked, keeping my voice level. He didn't even look up. Yeah, Mom's back is bad. It's just for a while. You can work from the kitchen table, can't you? You're always saying you can work anywhere. I had never once said I could work anywhere. But this is what happens when a person stops listening to you. They start remembering a version of you that's more convenient than the real one. I looked at my husband, at the back of his head, at the easy way he'd let his family pack up my livelihood while I was 30 feet away meeting a deadline, and something I'd been holding shut for 2 years quietly clicked open. I didn't argue. I want you to notice that, because the not arguing was the whole strategy. When you argue, you're asking permission. You're saying, please agree that I matter. I was done asking. You're right, I said. I'll figure something out. Wes nodded, pleased, and went back to his game. I went into the garage. My monitors sat in a cardboard box on the cold concrete, next to the lawnmower. I didn't plug them back in. Instead, I pulled out my phone, booked a room at the nicest hotel in the city, the one with the lake view and the good beds, and I packed a small bag, work laptop, charger, 2 changes of clothes, my passport, the folder from my fireproof box. The folder mattered most. Deed, mortgage statements, the card records, all of it. Then I walked back through the kitchen, where Lorraine was complaining that the chicken I hadn't cooked yet was running late, and I said, to the room in general, I'm staying somewhere else for a few nights. There's leftovers in the fridge. Where are you going? Wes asked, finally looking up. Somewhere with a real room, I said, and smiled, and left. The hotel bed was, I'll be honest, the best sleep I'd had in a year. I want to stop here, because what I did next is the part people misunderstand. They think the revenge is the loud part, the slammed door, the speech. It isn't. The real thing happened quietly, over the next 2 days, with a series of small, calm decisions that nobody in that house saw coming because they'd stopped seeing me entirely. The next morning, over hotel coffee, I opened my banking app. For 2 years, money had flowed out of my accounts automatically, invisibly, into the lives of 4 people who'd just decided my comfort came last. So I sat with my coffee, and I made that money visible again, by turning it off. I didn't drain anything. I didn't do a single thing that was sneaky or cruel. I simply stopped paying for a household I'd been kicked to the curb of, the shared credit card, the one carrying Brooke's car payment and the family groceries, was in my name, with Wes as an authorized user. I called the bank and lowered the limit to almost nothing. Not closed, just no longer an open faucet. The auto pay for Ron's truck repair plan, the one I'd quietly set up, I canceled. Lorraine's next prescription refill, which I'd been covering, I left alone. I'm not a monster. Some lines you don't cross, even when you're done. But the comfort spending, the car, the extras, the constant quiet subsidy, all of it went still. Then I made one phone call that mattered more than all the rest. My sister Anika is a real estate attorney, 2 years older than me, the person who'd told me to keep my deed clean back when I bought the place. I called her and told her everything, the office, the air mattress, the 2 years of carrying everyone. She was quiet for a moment, then she said, Priya, do they actually know whose house it is? And I realized, sitting in that hotel room, that they didn't, not really. They knew, in the way you know a fact you've never had to think about, but they'd never once felt it. To them it was Wes's house, or the family's house, or just the house, a thing that existed for their comfort. The woman who'd bought it had become invisible right alongside the money. No, I said. I don't think they do. Then maybe, Anika said carefully, it's time they found out. She drove up that evening. My sister, 2 years older, in her work blazer with a takeout bag in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other, and the second I opened the hotel door, I started laughing and crying at the same time, which surprised me, because I'd been so calm for 2 days that I'd half forgotten I had feelings underneath the calm. We sat on the hotel bed with the lake going dark out the window and ate noodles out of the cartons, the way we did when we were kids and our parents were fighting in the next room. You look better than you have in a year, Anika said, studying my face. You know that. You've looked gray for months. Tonight you look like you again. I slept 8 hours, I said. First time since I can remember. It's not the sleep. She set her carton down. Priya, do you hear how you've been talking about your own house? You say they're comfort. You say I didn't want to fight. You bought a 4-bedroom home at 26 with your own 2 hands, and you've been apologizing for taking up a room in it. I didn't have an answer for that. She was right, and the rightness of it sat in my chest like a stone. I'm not telling you to blow up your marriage, she said. That's yours to figure out, but I am telling you, as your sister and as someone who reads property law for a living, that you have been giving away your power one polite little inch at a time, and you're allowed to stop, tonight. You don't need anyone's permission, least of all theirs. We stayed up late. She walked me through what I could and couldn't do, the legal shape of it, what notice meant, what my rights actually were, and somewhere in there, between the noodles and the law, I stopped feeling like a woman who'd been kicked out of her room and started feeling like a woman who'd been handed back the keys to her own life. She drafted 2 things for me before she left the next morning, a formal notice for Brooke, who'd been living rent-free for 14 months, and a clear, written record of the financial arrangement, what I'd been covering, what I'd stopped covering, and why, not as a weapon, as a fact. While she worked on those over the following day, the messages started. It took less than a day for the household to feel the change. The first text came from Wes at noon. Hey, the card got declined at the gas station. Is something wrong with it? I didn't answer right away. I let him sit with the small, unfamiliar feeling of a card that didn't just work. Then Brooke, at 2. Priya, the grocery card isn't working? Mom needs stuff for dinner. Then Wes again, at 3. Did you turn something off? Brooke's car payment bounced. What's going on? I finished my work for the day first. The deadline I'd been buried in on Tuesday, the one nobody in that house knew or cared about. I delivered it from a hotel desk by the window, on time, perfect. My manager wrote back, "This is excellent. Genuinely some of the best work you've done." I read that twice. It had been a long time since anyone in my life had said something like that to me. Then I called Wes back. "Hey," I said, calm as still water. "Nothing's wrong with the card. I lowered the limit." "You what? Why would you?" "Because I needed my office back, and instead, you let your mother move into it." So I figured if my comfort wasn't a priority in my own house, my money shouldn't be a priority for everyone else's comfort either. Seemed fair. Silence. Then, slower, the first crack of understanding. "What do you mean, your house?" And there it was, 2 years of invisible, finally catching the light. "Wheeze," I said. "Whose name is on the deed?" A long pause. "I mean, it's our house. Whose name is on the mortgage you've never once paid?" "Nothing. Whose salary covers it? And the groceries? And Brooke's car? And your parents' flights? And your dad's truck? Think about it for a second. Really think. When did you last pay for any of it?" I could hear him doing the math, the awful, dawning math of a man realizing the floor he'd been standing on was someone he'd stopped looking at. "You never said anything," he finally managed. "No," I agreed. "That was my mistake. I made it all so easy that you forgot a person was doing it. So now I'm making it hard, just for a little while, so you can remember." That night, Brooke left the voicemail. I still have it. 3 minutes of her crying, swinging between furious and terrified, calling me selfish, then begging me to fix the card, then quiet, then asking, in a small voice, if she was going to have to move out. I didn't call back that night. Some answers land better in daylight. Wes showed up at the hotel a little after 10. I don't know how he found the right place. Maybe he called around. Maybe he just guessed I'd pick the one with the lake. He knocked, and I almost didn't open it. But I did, because a marriage you're not willing to open the door for is already over, and I wasn't ready to decide that yet. He looked terrible. Rumpled, gray, a man who'd spent a day discovering that the ground under his life was a person he'd stopped thanking. "Can I come in?" he asked. I let him stand in the doorway. "Say what you came to say." Brooke's losing it. Mom's furious. The card's not working. The truck thing got canceled. Nobody knows what's happening. He ran a hand through his hair. "Priya, what are you doing?" "I'm doing what I should have done 2 years ago," I said. "I'm letting you all feel the weight of the thing I've been carrying, so you'd never have to feel it. You could have just talked to me." That one almost made me laugh. "Wes, I came to you on Tuesday. I told you they'd put my office in the garage. You told me to work from the kitchen table and went back to your game. I have been talking to you for 2 years. You stopped listening so long ago you don't even remember the sound of it." He opened his mouth to argue, and then he didn't. Something passed over his face, the slow horror of a man playing back 2 years of small moments and seeing, finally, what they added up to. "I didn't know it was that much money," he said quietly. "The mortgage, the card, all of it. I never added it up." "I know you didn't," I said. "I made sure of it. That's the part I have to own. But you let your family carry my desk out of my own house, and you didn't even stand up off the couch. That part's yours." He sat down on the edge of the hotel bed, this big man suddenly looking small, and for a long minute neither of us said anything. "What do you want me to do?" he finally asked. "Go home," I said. "Tell them nothing's getting fixed tonight. I'll come home tomorrow, and I'll explain everything once, to all of you, and then things are going to be different." "That's not a threat, that's just what's true now." He left, and I slept, again, better than I had any right to. I went home Friday morning, not because they'd won me over, because it was my house, and I was done sleeping in hotels to avoid people who should have been the ones uncomfortable. I walked in the front door with Anika's folder under my arm and found all 4 of them in the living room, waiting, the way people wait when they've finally understood something has gone very wrong and they don't know how to fix it. Lorraine started first, because of course she did. "Priya, I think there's been a misunderstanding, all of this over a bedroom. It's not about the bedroom," I said, and the calm in my own voice surprised even me. "Sit down, Lorraine, all of you. I'm only going to explain this once, and then I'd like you to actually hear it." They sat. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I laid the folder on the coffee table and opened it, the way you set down a fact you can't argue with. "This is the deed to this house," I said. "One name, mine. I bought it at 26, 2 years before I met Wes. This is the mortgage statement, mine. This is the card that pays for the groceries, the car, the flights, the truck. Mine. For 2 years I have paid for the life all 4 of you have been living, and I did it quietly, because I love this family, or I wanted to. And this week, you moved my work, the actual thing that earns the actual money, out of my own office and into the garage, next to the lawnmower, without asking me. While I was 30 feet away, working, the room was very still. I'm not throwing anyone into the street, I went on. I'm not cruel, but things are going to change, starting today. Brooke, you've lived here free for 14 months. You have 60 days to find your own place, and in those 60 days, you'll be looking for a job and paying for your own car. Lorraine, Ron, you're welcome to visit, as guests, in the guest room, for reasonable stays we agree on together, not 3-month occupations that end with my furniture in the garage. And Wes, I looked at my husband, the man I'd married, who hadn't said a word. You and I are going to have a much longer conversation, alone, about what a marriage is and what it isn't. Because a partner is not a person you let your family push to the edges of her own house while you watch a game. Nobody argued. There was nothing to argue with. The truth was sitting open on the coffee table. Here's the part people always want, the after. Brooke moved out in 51 days, 9 ahead of schedule, which told me she'd had options the whole time and just hadn't needed them while I was paying her way. She got a job at a clinic across town. We're not close, but the last time she came by, she paid for the pizza, and she said, quietly, not quite an apology, "I didn't know you bought this place." I believed her. That was the whole problem in one sentence. Lorraine and Ron went home 2 weeks later. They still visit. They stay in the guest room for a week, sometimes 2, and Lorraine has not rearranged my kitchen since. The first morning of her last visit, she made breakfast. For me, it was terrible dry toast and overcooked eggs, and I ate every bite of it like it was the best meal of my life, because of what it meant. Wes was the hardest part, and I won't pretend it wrapped up neat. We went to counseling. Some weeks it helped, and some weeks I sat in that little office and wondered why I'd married a man who could let his family carry my desk to the garage without standing up. But he did the work, slowly. He started paying the mortgage some months, real money, his name finally meaning something. He learned what things cost. He sat down one night, months later, with all the numbers I'd kept invisible for years, and he cried, actually cried, and said, "I had no idea what you were carrying. I'm so sorry I stopped seeing it. We're still together, on new terms, honest ones, where the money is visible and the work is shared, and my office door stays shut when it needs to. It's better than it was. I had to nearly lose it to get there, but it's better. If you made it all the way here, you already know what it's like to be the one holding everything up while everyone else just lives in the house you're holding. So let me say it plainly. Subscribe to this channel, because the people who get treated like furniture are usually the ones holding up the whole roof, and this is the one place that's actually for you. Tap the button. You've earned the right to be seen, and here's the thing I'd want you to carry out of this. No speech, just the one true thing I learned in a hotel bed that week. When you make your love invisible, people stop calling it love and start calling it normal. They build their whole comfortable lives on a foundation they've decided not to look at, which is you, and then one day, they move your desk to the garage because they genuinely forgot you were a person and not a utility. The fix isn't to scream that you matter. Screaming asks them to agree. The fix is to quietly stop carrying what was never your job to carry alone, and let the house get cold for a few days, and watch how fast everyone remembers exactly who kept it warm. I kept it warm for years and let no one see. Never again. The room with the good light is my office. The door stays shut when I'm working, and anyone who lives under my roof now knows whose roof it is. My name is Priya. I bought the house, and I sleep in it just fine.